Okay, so now we're going to start our panel discussion. I'll introduce our next moderator, where he's going to introduce the speakers. He is an experienced professional with 15 years of applied and mixed experience in cybersecurity and data network infrastructure. He's currently leading RSA operations in KSA and Bahrain and assuring alignment with the region's cybersecurity vision strategies and program. Let's give a big round of applause for Mr. Abdullah Al Saadoun.
Bismillah, salatu rasulillah. First of all, I'd like to thank all the audiences, the speakers, and the organizers for this amazing event, bringing all those peoples under one single roof, all those experts to share the knowledge and information of cybersecurity, and that's definitely for the prosperity and the glory of our beloved kingdom. The country has laid the grounds and the pillars of the 2030 transformation plan. And one of the essential parts of this transformation plan is the digital transformation that the country has decided to go with it. And with that digital transformation comes definitely a lot of challenges, a lot of threats that mandate us to protect our infrastructure and to protect our most valuable asset, which is the data. For the next 35 minutes, we will be discussing the implications of cybersecurity on digital transformation. And for that, I will be having with me on the panel Mr. Mohammed Al Safh. He's the Senior Enterprise Architect at Citrix. Mr. Tom Davidson, the Pre-Sale Director at Lookout. Mr. Rashid bin Fnais, cybersecurity expert at STC, and Dr. Faisal Sibai, CISO at Public Investment Fund. So, we'll be starting with you, Mohammed. So, why is security seen as the enemy of digital transformation? Do you see it as an enemy?
Security is actually not the enemy of digital transformation. So, as you know, digital transformation is about change. It's about agility, speed, connectivity, user experience, and above all, disruption. But in the eyes of many, security tends to stand in the way of all this innovation. But if you truly want to succeed in your digital transformation journey, you have to change the mindset, strategy, and maturity in regards to security. It is a key thing to change. Also, you have to look at it from the beginning. Security needs to come to the table from the beginning. You have to invite them early on. And in addition to that, you have to look at data protection and privacy as assets and strength points rather than a cost. And you have to invite them to the table, those security executives. You can't be a standalone. Thank you.
Sure. Moving on to Tom. Tom, the rise of mobility has had a huge impact on digital transformation. In what ways is this creating challenges and new opportunities for cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk about mobility because that's my area of focus and expertise. But I think all of us are working more and more from mobile devices. And a good thing you can do in your organizations is to look at how many logins are actually coming in to your authentication schemes through mobile devices now, and you'll probably see it's huge and growing. So the impact's been massive. I think the benefits we've had are obvious, flexibility, people able to work when they want to and how they want. And I think that's helped drive transformation because we've seen that more and more mobile devices are connecting straight to cloud. It's helped us to consolidate, to provide more of a consumer-like experience. So on the whole, it's been a good thing and it's helped accelerate. But of course, from a security point of view, that's brought some challenges. I think the biggest challenge with mobility is it happened very quickly. When I talk to lots of customers, they didn't necessarily plan for mobility. Mobility happened when the iPhone was released in 2007 and the CEO came in and said, get my email on this thing. And so this happened quite sporadically, quite piecemeal. It was often driven by the mobility team, not the security team. And then when they tried to retrofit security into that equation, it really started off with just management. It was about managing settings onto the device. It wasn't about necessarily securing it. And we put a lot of trust in the platforms themselves. And if you fast forward 10 years, what we're now seeing is holes appearing, because these are complex operating systems on these devices with apps that are being written to drive business innovation rather than security. And so you think about where these devices are operating, they're outside of your perimeter, they're outside of most of your controls, and that genie is out of the bottle. You're not going to get your users to go back to where they were. So we have to embrace it, we have to find a way to work with it, which kind of brings me on to opportunities. So if you think about the opportunities themselves, well, one opportunity with mobile is that the fact that these devices are zero trust in the truest sense of the word. So as we're trying to move towards zero trust in our security posture, what better place to start than mobile? You're very unlikely to be able to extend your existing desktop security onto mobile, so you're going to have to start again and rethink about things that way. If you do it right, you're going to get the trust of your users. You're going to get them on board, and that's going to remove one of the biggest challenges, which is normally users working around the system, open up new form factors and business opportunities. So yes, it's difficult, but if you embrace it, hopefully you'll find there's some positive sides to it as well.
Yeah, I believe that we're seeing a lot of progress when it comes to the technologies. Not that much, actually, but I believe we're still on the way in protecting the latest trends of mobility. Moving to Rashid, can we say that the requirements and needs for cybersecurity governance and cybersecurity frameworks got changed due to the digital transformation in the business? By the way, gents, feel free to comment on any of the questions that the panelists are answering.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. I think in the same time we have the digital transformation, we have to have an equivalent transformation from the cybersecurity side. The cybersecurity principles should be incorporated and injected on the business digital model we have now. I think we are all struggling of aligning the cybersecurity strategy with the business strategy for the traditional, business model. Is it the same now? Yes, it's the same, but with more, challenging that the shifting in business priorities in the strategy based on the digital transformation is very rapid, very fast. So we have to adopt that. We have to have some sort of a new version of cybersecurity system, which it should be adaptive to the new business requirements and the fast changing we have and more challenging we have in a matter of cybersecurity. We have to have the system well connected because of the massive integrations we have, either with business systems, with IT, or with operation technologies. We have to assure of the scalability and the sustainability of the controls we are implementing. So yes, there is a lot of changes in the requirements. We have to adopt the speed and the innovation built in the digital transformation model.
I totally agree, and also we have to salute our colleagues in the NCA, National Cybersecurity Authority, for all their frameworks that you're releasing lately relevant to the governance and cybersecurity, which is amazing, something we never had before. So we're seeing the value out of this, so I totally agree with you. Dr. Faisal, similar organizations tend to have, small organizations tend to have some flexibilities on the way which they apply cybersecurity into their digital transformation. But how this manageable with other larger, more complex environments, and what are some of these challenges?
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. So this is this is an interesting question, and when you think about it, cybersecurity is a really big thing, and you need to think about the organization really you're applying it. So when you think about a company that's worth 100 or 200 employees, it's very different when you actually apply it to 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. Yes, they have common factors between both sides, but you really need to think about it. Of course, that's the cybersecurity umbrella. And when you add the digital transformation into the mix, it becomes much, much more complex. So throughout my experience, I've actually tested this in smaller scaled companies, and I've tested this in larger scaled companies. And the result was very clear that you actually have to treat them very well different. In concept, more or less, you're doing the same thing. So for example, in smaller companies, you have you basically to talk to your information technology, to procurement, and all of that very easily. But much larger organization, it becomes very, very tough. So what I discovered throughout my experience is the best way is to deal with each and every entity within your organization as a smaller company and try to solve those problems on its own and not try to escalate everything at a higher level. Will you have discrepancies and problems? Correct. That can be sorted out at the bigger picture, but treat every single smaller department on its own. And therefore, when you have all the departments on board with what you're trying to do, you can completely melt it all together. Of course, I've worked in companies that had 100,000 people. I've worked in companies 11,000, 200. So it's more or less the same concept. And it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge depending on the company. You can even sometimes see the hesitation even with smaller companies. But from experience, it's the best way to micro do it and not actually think that you're going to be able to do everything at the same time.
Don't you also agree that the nature of the business that those enterprises are conducting also relevant to the cybersecurity measures that you're implying? It might be a small company, but the kind of sensitive data they're dealing
Correct.
with, so it might be something equivalent to the big enterprises. So
Correct.
also the nature of the business they're conducting
Definitely.
sides with the size of the organization.
Definitely.
So going back to Mohammed, can you think of any reasons why cybersecurity maturity and strategy are lagging behind in regards to digital transformation?
Yeah, sure thing. So if we look at it, the maturity of cybersecurity isn't where it should be. And there are reasons for it. And I can tie a few of them to digital evolution. And I'm going to elaborate on 4 key pillars that I believe to be true. Strategy. And I think I touched base on it earlier on. So security is not easy. We all know that. But it shouldn't start by adding more and more control. You need to start by looking at your most critical systems, processes, possibility of attack, and risks. Yes, it's true in the digital transformation world, risks and vulnerabilities increase. But on the other hand, you need to innovate. So there are no silver bullets. We all know this. So what you need to do is change the mindset. And I think I talked about this earlier. You need to move from a reactive model, basically, where you're saying, I'll just watch my front door, this will never happen to me, to more of an educated model where I probably have inside threats on my network. Let me go find them, remove them, and stop them from coming back by doing 2 things. Minimize my attack surface and educate the users and the IT. The second one is business case. So it's always hard to argue the business case for security. If we look at other projects like collaboration, digital transformation, it's easy. It's an easy argument versus security. You're dealing with risks and the unpredictable. But on the other hand, you should not look at it as gaining back cost. You should treat it as a factor. You need to factor in your losses if you fail to secure what needs securing, right? So by that, you really need to secure what needs securing. And I'll say it again, you need to secure what needs securing. And you only truly know it when it happens. It's already too late. Your business is interrupted, you lost your data, and your reputation goes down the drain.
Totally agree. So focusing.
The next one, skill set. It's high on the list. You cannot find the right security expert for a specific application. And there are reasons for that, especially in this digital world, where you have loads of data converging, and applications are constantly on the rise. Also, if we look at it, you can throw money at the problem, and people to a certain point, but this is not the way to go. You need to involve machine learning, analytics. This is where both items will play a big role. And if we look at it, analytics is something that you're seeing trending nowadays, right? It is a key leg in a 3-legged stool, right? You got workspaces providing you information that can take any form. You got networking, pretty much bridging that digital parameter, and then you got analytics, providing you user trends and insights, right? And the last one is security on the user themselves, especially in this digital mobile era, right? A lot of organizations moved and transitioned to a digital transformation form. in one way or another. They adapted. Cloud, mobility, Internet of Things, machine learning, and they've done so to provide their employees and their workforce the best tools. This workforce that I'm talking about is a young workforce. They're digital natives, millennials, if I may, and these guys don't like to be tied to a desk, right? They want to innovate on the go. These guys want things to work simple, in a simple manner, like Facebook, let's say, like the app Facebook. So by doing so, right, you just expanded your digital parameter and your attack surface. And this is where I believe a workspace or workspaces that are intelligent and secure will provide the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Totally agree. So going to Tom. Tom, is digital transformation making it easier for attackers to be successful?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a broad question. I'm not going to give you a yes/no answer, but maybe let's start with thinking about what transformation is, what we understand by digital transformation. I suppose from my point of view, I think of it as simplification. I think of it as a kind of a renewal, a refresh, a raising of the bar, if you like, new platforms, new applications. So if we look at the sort of for and against, I mean, in argument for security with transformation is obviously we move things to a new level. So we go for the latest OSs, the latest configurations and so on. And typically we're simplifying things by consolidating down. So we're typically seeing fewer numbers of services, fewer numbers of configuration points that customers have to deal with, which is a good thing. And we're seeing a raising of standards around identity, authentication, and federation of that side of things. So that's a good thing. Inherent platform security, if I look at mobile, which is where I'm operating, great things in iOS and Android that have really raised the bar in terms of what we saw 10, 20 years ago on the desktops. So that's a great thing. But then let's look at it from the other side. I suppose the thing I see is that every time we raise the bar, we tend to relax and we feel like we've done the job. And as we know, security is a continuous process. It's a continuous process of evolution. As we find new things that attackers have found, we have to defend against them. And as we increase our defenses, so they get more sophisticated. So there's always this gap where we relax a bit too much. And I think we've definitely seen that in my area, where everyone used to say to me 3 years ago, the iPhone's completely safe, there's nothing to worry about. And now if you read the headlines, you realize that there's different stories there. The other thing I see is that as we zoom in on a few services, we consolidate down to the same kinds of technologies, there's more at stake. So if you have a breach in a popular app now, you're not talking about breaching 10,000 users, 100,000 users. You're potentially talking hundreds of millions, maybe even 1 billion plus devices. If you have a vulnerability into the Android operating system, for example, you think of the attack surface there, it's huge. And actually the window of opportunity is huge because of this difficulty in patching those devices in many cases. So the potential impact is higher. And of course that means that the asset value of what people are going after is higher. So on the one hand, it's more complex to crack into these systems, but there's more interest because if you find that key, you've got much more to go after. So we're having to work harder. The other thing is data's obviously proliferating. So that's making our jobs more complex, understanding where our data sits. But also that there can be a false sense of security there. We may feel that our data is in trusted stores that are well defined. But of course, people are forgetting about access. And in my domain, one of the things we see the most happening are phishing attacks. And phishing attacks not to target the mobile device because it's a source of data, but phishing attacks because that's where the user's credentials are. And typically we all use two-factor, I hope. Where do our soft tokens often sit? They sit on the mobile device. Maybe we're using SMS as a two-factor. So again, don't overlook that. And also the users themselves. Every time we raise the technology bar, we just open the window to try and attack individuals. And of course, we're in this environment now where there's more of an expectation on end users for their own privacy, for their own personal experience on a work-enabled device or vice versa. So there's areas where we've perhaps lost visibility and we're having to put more trust in our users, which comes back to the point you made about education. You can't stop that education process. So I said I wouldn't give you a yes or no answer, but a few things to think about.
Actually, it's a very interesting question. I would like to ask the same questions to the others if they want to answer. Do you really think, and if you, Hamad, Rashid, Faisal, that digital transformation will make the attackers more successful in their attempts or not? I mean, should we stop our digital transformation plan because of this, or should we take a certain measures? Does any one of you have a thought about this?
The reality we have that the human being attack surface is expanding.
Correct.
In the same time, the technology attack is expanding. I mean, the number of, let us say, the number of world's population going online is exploiting.
True.
So this is, I think, one of the facts that maybe it will make the attack much easier, because we are having the issue of lacking of awareness in different levels. So I will say, my opinion, yes, but we have to do a lot about that.
Totally agree. Comments? Great.
I mean, I would reiterate the same thing that Rashid basically said. I definitely oppose stopping digital transformation because it doesn't make sense. Security is really something that we should come naturally, and but it's the fact of what we live today. We need to just basically bite the bullet and continue to work on the digital transformations and try to enhance how we can basically stop the different attack vectors.
And usually be ready for it. So
Yep.
you're embracing it, you're adopting it, but
Exactly.
you're also getting ready for it. So question to you, Rashid. DevOps methodology is one of the famous model adopted by organizations to enable digital transformation. What are the challenges to assure cybersecurity supported and enablement of such approach?
First of all, we have to agree on something, that cybersecurity is an enabler for business, either in traditional business or even in the new model of business.
Correct.
This takes me to the answer of my colleague Muhammad when we're discussing is cybersecurity is the enemy of digital transformation. From where this perception came? We have an issue and a fact in the business that cybersecurity is considered not an enemy, but cybersecurity is taking away the organizational resources from the opportunities from growth. This is one of the perceptions business has now. So we have to run, I mean, cybersecurity in a different way to make it more enable and more support. What we need for the DevOps, we have now the DevSecOps. So we injected security in the middle of development and operation. In the past, the development, it was on one side, and the operation of the organization on one side. So they were working in silos. So the new concept came to have DevOps as one concept, one entity, one team. So later on, cybersecurity was trying to apply the principles, I mean, to this approach. So they were considered as a silos also. So what we need to do, and we need to build one entity for development and security and operations in the same unit. So we need to have more collaboration, more communication with DevOps teams from cybersecurity point of view. There is a fact that based on the reports, 20% of cybersecurity teams successfully got engaged with DevOps, and they could incorporate the digital initiatives with cyber security initiatives. So it is very challenging mission. We have to have the cybersecurity, all stages of the pipeline for DevOps to be there. They have to be in the same, I mean, the same start of any idea or any innovation the DevOps team is talking about. Another aspect is we have to have, when we see the DevOps team, they are depending heavily in three, let us say, tools or factors. One of them is the cloud infrastructure. Another thing is the fast deployment of the solutions. And the third thing is the open source tools, which supports them to do more innovation in a very fast way. So from cybersecurity point of view, we have to build a robust policies, standards, policies. So we are completely engaged and running the business with DevOps. So another thing about the professionals, they have to get more familiar about the tools they are using, about the containers they are using in the DevOps. So yes, we have to do a lot to enable and support business and DevOps concepts, and this is not a mission impossible, but is a very hard mission.
It is hard. So we've been in the market for quite a good time now, when we've seen a lot of changes and transformation with the concept of cybersecurity and also the investments or the importance of the investment on cybersecurity. Do you believe this still exists right now in the Saudi market? Do we face these challenges with the executives trying to allocate budgets and push them to invest in the cybersecurity, or now it's completely treated as a mandate and a very important kind of measures that need to be taken by organizations?
I think based on the reflection we have of, I mean, especially in our country, I mean, the vision we have in 2030, all leaders, I mean, in business, they are supporting and they are a little bit, let us say, aware and mature of cybersecurity. Still, there are some issues, I mean, in a matter of support, because business comes first. But from time to time, when we build our processes in more agile way, I mean, from cybersecurity side, all this, I mean, culture will change.
Totally agree. Going to Dr. Faisal, with the digital transformation being a necessity today, should cybersecurity still be treated as an independent add-on or further embedded into the transformation? And why do you think?
So I think this was, or this has been a controversial area for a very, very long time, with different schools of thought. Some people say we've evolved, everything should be completely embedded. Some people say, no, if you embed it, how do you have control? And each and every one has its positives and negatives, that's for sure. But I personally think, this is my humble opinion after being in so many different companies and working on different projects and everything, different positions, is that, to be honest, it's a bit of both. You can't really 100% rely on embedding something, and you can't 100% rely on add-on. I know a lot of people might kill me for this, because specifically with the struggle sometimes when it comes to resources and organizations and how you would fulfill that. But the reality is, how do you depend on embedding something if you don't really check if it's embedded? Because saying the check mark of it's embedded is not enough in an organization. So for example, I mean, DevOps is a perfect example. Although that's not my expertise area, but it's a very good example. We rely on some of these developers to conduct basically the security checks and requirements that they need to do within their software. But how do you make sure, unless you really go down and basically analyze that code, that everything has been checked? So in reality, you're not just embedding. They might have the standards or the rules and regulations of what they need to do, but you would still need to basically do your full-blown revision, which means you're really doing a bit of both. So I think it's very, very difficult to get away with one or the other. Yes, it's very important to embed, but I don't think that removes completely the add-on factor where you really, really have to constantly check. And some people confuse this to internal audit. They confuse it with compliance. It's really a security matter, which really has to stay within focus teams. Sometimes it's even good to think about them as two separate teams, because in a digital transformation, it's not all about technology. You really have other elements that are within your organization that involve business, processes, transactions within your organization that are on top of your technology that you need to actually include, which really don't just think about technology. So I think moving forward, we really have to accept the importance of cyber, and I'm happy that the NCA is right now taking this very serious. But again, even that is going to require some more oversight and more oversights to make this successful.
Also, the part that we might miss here is the people. And that's what the country is doing amazing work, actually, when it comes to developing the people and their expertise.
Exactly.
I'm also sure that you heard about at Wake Bootcamp that graduated around 100 experts on cybersecurity with a very intensive trainings. That's what the country is doing. That actually reflects how important the cybersecurity is to the 2030 vision for us. What an amazing comments and answers. Totally enjoying it. Thank you so much. Now, let's see if any of the audience have any questions for the panelists here.
Anyone?
Okay.
So thank you for this excellent discussion. I have a just quick question from the panel that when we are applying cybersecurity to digital transformation, should it be a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach?
Who would like to take this?
Well, I think I just answered a little bit of that in my question, which is embedded versus add-on. So if you think about it, your add-on is really your top-down approach, and your embedded is bottom-up approach. And if you really go back to the analogy that I basically made, is that you need both on both sides, and combine them together to have your full-blown proper program. I think that's how I see it personally. I don't know if anyone else from the panel disagrees or has his own way.
Great. Hope that's answered the questions. Tom? Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just I have commented earlier afternoon. It was shown that about $1 trillion USD has been invested on in security. So I don't know, this one includes also the attack of lack of security, because if the number is really declared, which is very hard to tell when some companies and entities being attacked by ransomware, other things. So the money is not paid on public or general. So I guess the drawbacks of lack of security will consume a lot of money and hit the economy, company and any entity-wise more than this number. So I guess it's a good time now to move to invest in security, because by way or another you are going to invest in security, lack or spend to protect yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, totally agree. Any comments on this?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to comment on that, I suppose, maybe related to the previous one as well, is I think one thing we can do is try and start to position security as actually a good enabler for the business. Because I think someone made the comment earlier about, security being the brake, being the enemy of transformation. I've seen quite a few organizations where they've been quite successful in terms of changing that round so that security is actually seen as a way to make the organization more successful. It's maybe a bit more applicable with some of the business to consumer things we see, but I'm from the UK, and one thing I've noticed in the UK with the banking industry is that all banks are pretty much the same these days in our country. And one of the ways, as people turn to mobile as their primary interface with the bank, one of the ways they can differentiate is actually by being more secure. So we've got to the point where we see commercials on the television between the popular television shows from banks talking about security, which wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. And so it's starting to come into the public thinking now. And I think if you can get that sown through the culture of the organization as well, so everybody in the business is thinking, how could security make us better and not just slow me down? That can definitely help.
Agreed. Any other questions? Last one. Let me help you out.
السلام عليكم. نهاد المحروق, technology evangelist. Thanks for the panel, thanks for the discussions. My question is, it seems to me, as being in this field for some time, that we're moving from a solo cyber or solo security, like virus scan or spam, to more of a network or data science behavior analytics. Do I understand this properly in the sense of where we're going into new directions of cybersecurity, like studying the traffic, studying the behavior of the traffic on a network, on a comprehensive point of view?
From my point of view regarding this is the future is the future of data. And why is that? Because of the new implementation of digital transformation and the IoT, concept behind it, generated, trillions and terabytes of data. So yes, security is taking care now about the data because it's the new foil now. But without, forgetting, the AV or other aspects of network security and the endpoints. But yes, what you are saying is right because of the new generation. Now the data is expanding, the IoT is generating a lot of data, and business is doing artificial intelligence based on this data to create more opportunities. In the same way, cybersecurity should adopt the artificial intelligence on their systems to protect and trying to respond to the threats. So what you are thinking is right, from my point of view.
Any other comments?
And on the tail end of that, if we look at it, as I said earlier, tons of data converge in the digital transformation world. No human can shuffle through that data. So you need some type of machine learning and analytics to look at the user insights, trends and behavior, and mark risks along the way.
I'd like to add one thing, and it's very important actually. When you talked about antiviruses, I think 20 years ago, that would have been sufficient. But today, even the people that are trying to do your exploitations are becoming smarter. They know that they will be caught through these things, so they become more agile of what they need to circumvent to basically go to the next step. So if you think about it, what you brought about data science and behavioral analytics, that's very, very important because people now are conducting most of their exploitations through behavior and not really through traditional scripts and basically Trojan horses and all of that. That's gone. You tend to not still see that at all. So I think, is it important? I think it's the new big thing. Where consuming data, analyzing the data, and actually conducting behavior or basically coming out with analytics and behavior out of your data is really the new thing. Because some of these exploitations can take more than a year. They've been seen for years and years to go until they come to the final point.
Amazing.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, sure. Quick one.
Just to add 30 seconds. We use data. I'll give you an example of how we use machine learning in our technology. So one of the threats on a mobile device could be an app, could be a risky or malicious app. We ingest every day maybe 20,000 new apps, which sounds a lot, but there's a lot of apps get written. There's no way a human could sit and sift through that many apps every day. But so what we do is we use machine learning to pivot down to a smaller, finite number of apps that can be looked at. But I do think the important point is here not to get too carried away, because all of the vendors like to use marketing, and AI and machine learning are good buzzwords at the moment. So it's important to know that it's one of the tools. It's not the only tool, it's one of the tools. Another comment on that as well is obviously collecting data is really powerful because it fuels the algorithms and it allows us to train the models better. But the part of the challenge there is we've got to just be a bit careful, because if you look at some of the controversy around popular apps at the moment, popular services, it's been around their privacy policies and what they're doing with data. So what we're seeing now is this tension within the businesses where they want to use more data to drive these technologies, but they also know that there's a line that they have to draw about how much data is acceptable, what they can actually collect, when and why. And I think that's the thing we're going to see more of in the next few years.
Thanks, Tom. What a valuable information you just shared today, gentlemen, and I had the honor of moderating this panel with such amazing experts in cybersecurity. Dr. Faisal, Rashid, Tom, and Mohammed, thank you so much for your contribution. And the gentlemen in the audiences, thank you so much again for all the questions and the reactions. Thank you.